Weeks ago, I had to do something that was a little bit outside of my comfort zone, and that was I had to go to the mechanic. And it's out of my comfort zone because I don't know anything about cars. So they could say, oh, you need a new fan belt or a new higgamajiggy or whatever it is. And I just say, oh, okay, sure, great. Actually, I say, oh, okay, sure, great. I notice that my voice tends to deepen when I go to the mechanic. But the reason I went was there is a light that's on in my car's dashboard. It's a low oil level warning light. It's like a little oil can that lights up. And so when I went there, he said, your oil is fine, it's just a light thing, a computer thing. And that he couldn't take care of it, but that I needed to go to a dealer to take care of it. And the dealership was going to charge me $500 to turn off that light. So I said, you know, I can live with that light. And what's been great is I've actually become grateful for that light. Especially when I think about it in terms of today's gospel. Because when I turn the ignition and that light comes on, it serves as a reminder to me to ask, okay, today, do I have enough oil in my vehicle, in my vessel? And wouldn't it be great if we had like a spiritual warning light that would come on and let us know like we're depleted and maybe we need to go fill up and get some more oil? In the epistle this week, I had a quote from Mother Teresa, and she said, to keep a lamp burning, you have to keep adding oil to it. And that is true for our spiritual lives. If we want to be a light with the flame, we've got to add the oil of spirit. Now, in Jesus' day, oil was used for lamps and for cooking, but it was also used to anoint the sick. And it was used to welcome people into your home, visitors and dignitaries. And so oil is known as being a representation of the Spirit of God. And that's the oil that we're talking about here in this story. Now, of course, Jesus tells the story of these 10 bridesmaids, 5 of whom were foolish because they didn't bring enough oil. And then what happened? When the bridegroom came, they weren't there because they were out getting oil, and they missed the banquet. Now, as you know, Jesus' parables are always stories that are about us. So we are the bridesmaids. Whether you're male or female, you're the bridesmaid. Sometimes this parable is called the parable of the 10 virgins. But we're all the virgins. It is about going to this wedding, preparing for this wedding. A wedding is symbolic of a union. Whenever you hear Jesus talk about a wedding, it is about our marriage with God, the union of humanity with divinity. That's what we're preparing for, or we should be preparing for, so that we can be ignited with that light of the Christ if we have enough oil in us. But are we prepared? That really is the question to ask ourselves. Now, this season is really the season of preparation. We're doing it in our homes as we're preparing for winter. So everybody's making sure that their furnace is, checked and ready for the winter. They're putting snow tires on their car. Their boats are in storage. They're blowing out their sprinkler system and wrapping all of their precious plants with burlap, and everybody's preparing for this. And we could choose not to. I mean, you don't have to do those things, but if you don't, what's going to happen? Pipes are going to burst, plants are going to die, maybe your car is going to slide off the road in the snow. You're doing these things for protection. This is true of preparing ourselves spiritually. If we do not prepare ourselves spiritually, we are putting our spiritual lives at risk. And when the storms of our lives come, we're not going to be prepared. Now, 2 Sundays from today is the first Sunday of Advent. And that's what Advent means. It's a time of preparation. And what are we preparing for between Advent and Christmas? We're preparing for the rebirth of the light in the lamp. That's what we're preparing for. We're building up enough oil so that on Christmas we can be alight with the flame of the Christ. Now, in today's gospel, Jesus starts off and he says, the kingdom of heaven is like this story. And so some people say, well, this story is for us, for heaven, after we die. That right now on earth, we're preparing ourselves so that when we die, we'll get into heaven. But I've told you this before. Jesus never describes heaven as a place after we die. Jesus' words about heaven are, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And the kingdom of heaven is at hand, which means right now. We are not preparing ourselves for the afterlife. We're preparing ourselves for now. Right now, that's when Jesus is wanting this union to happen, is now. That's what we're preparing for. Now, some of you who have been members of Douglas UCC for a number of years, you may have attended a few years ago, this congregation watched a DVD series called Living the Questions. And one of the speakers in that DVD is an author named Michael Morwood. And he said this, these are his words. Seriously, Jesus didn't give a rip about heaven. It is my utter conviction that the dream, the intensity of Jesus of Nazareth had nothing to do with people getting to heaven. It was always about the kingdom of heaven. It's about here. It's about now. It's about being empowered by the presence of the divine within us. That is the Jesus story. The Jesus reality is the divine merging with the human. And that I really like, because that really is what we're preparing for, is that merging of our humanity with the divinity. And it happens now, right now, not in the afterlife. Now, many people prepare for things in fear. And I think some people do that in their spiritual lives. But let me give you an example of people preparing in fear. It would be like people who think the end of the world is going to come, or going to have some nuclear disaster, and so their basements are stockpiled with water and canned goods, and they just want to make sure that everything's going to be okay because something bad is going to happen and we want to be prepared. God does not want us to prepare for our spiritual lives like that, that we are preparing in fear. I want to make sure that I'm living a good life so that I can get to heaven. God wants us to prepare spiritually with love. Think about parents preparing a nursery for their baby that's about to be born and getting everything ready with excitement and joy and love about this arrival that's going to happen. Or think about it, a young couple preparing for their wedding day with great excitement and joy. That's how we want to prepare for this. Now, Jesus ends today's gospel saying, keep awake, because the bridesmaids fell asleep. We want to keep awake because we don't know when that moment's going to happen. We don't know when that moment's going to happen where we're going to feel this light. Sometimes we think that it's only going to happen in the meditation or the prayer chair. That's why I like the words of integration for this morning, which said we think it's only going to happen during our prayer time that we're going to feel this light. But it could happen at any time. So Jesus is saying, keep awake. And I often like the word vigil. We hear the word vigil a lot in religious terms. Vigil means be vigilant, be watchful. But you're not being watchful because you think something bad's going to happen. You're being watchful with such excitement and joy because you know that this merging is going to happen, and you're just so excited for this union, for this marriage. You're watching it with great excitement. The cover of our bulletin today has that little lamp with the light, and it says, "Tending God's light." And tending I really like, because to tend to something means to take care of it, but it also has the same root word as the word attentive. Attentive means pay attention. That's, I think, what Jesus is really trying to get to in this gospel, is to say, pay attention. God is everywhere, in everything, in every situation. Not just at WUCC for 1 hour on Sunday morning, or that 20 minutes we spend in meditation each morning. God is in everything, in the good things and in the bad things. And I put them in quotes because it's all good, it's all God. Even those situations that we think are bad, God is there, and that's what Jesus is saying. Pay attention to where God is and notice God in everything. Carl Jung said, "As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being." That's our sole purpose for being, is to kindle that light in us, that light of the divine. Now, the foolish bridesmaids tried to get the oil from the wise ones, and they couldn't. They had to get it for themselves. And I think what this is trying to tell us is that nobody can tend to our spiritual lives for us. We've got to do it ourselves. Nobody can do it for us. You are in charge. You are the person that is responsible for your spiritual life. So do those things that help you with your inner fuel. Do those things that are adding oil to your lamp. Whatever they are that connect you with spirit. So come to our Wednesday night centering prayer groups. Start a daily prayer practice for yourself. Do some spiritual reading instead of watching some silly sitcom. Do whatever it is to make yourself fill up your lamp with oil so that you are ready when the light happens, when the light comes. And so I invite you this week to consider, do I have that low oil level warning light flashing before me? And before my vehicle breaks down, what can I do to add some oil so I have that inner fuel? We are preparing not for the afterlife, but for the here and now. For the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Namaste.